order and welcome you to the Wilbraham Regional School District School Committee meeting. It is 6:32 p.m. I see that Wilbraham Public Access Channel is recording. Is there anyone else here recording this meeting? Okay, so we will do roll call in alphabetical order. Cheryl Caruana. Tim Collins.
Present.
Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Lisa Murray.
Here.
Rich Redeker.
Here.
Mike Cherabassi.
Here.
Michelle Boudreau. Here. Could you please stand? Lisa will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are going to begin with our student representative, Elena Bergeron. Thanks for being here.
Hi, of course. Some new faces, if you don't know me. My name is Elena Bergeron. I am the senior student representative of this district. I have a handout for you guys, so if you wouldn't mind taking and passing it along. So recently, the other student representative and I attended our delegate assembly for the Massachusetts Association of Student Representatives. And every time after we attend this conference, we kind of, spark some ideas in our brain after we hear what's going on with other districts in the state and everything that those students do to stay involved. So hopefully I printed out enough copies there. So we then created a video and we reached out to our students and our peers from Minnechaug. And our video was basically stating what a student representative does, how our job is important, and how we can stay connected to others. So we then sent out a survey afterwards, and these are the survey results. We had 662 responses from Minnechaug students, which is around 2/3 of Minnechaug, which is a very good turnout, actually. We find sometimes that students still like to participate in surveys, but we did find that we had really high numbers because the students felt that they were being more included and their student voices were being heard more. So starting on the first page, our first question was, did you know the district has student representatives? And the majority said yes, but the rest was kind of split. Our next question was, would you be interested in hearing more updates about the district from the student representatives? Only things that directly involve you or the other students in your school. 44% said yes. And then after that, we decided to ask what some topics the student representatives should focus on this year and what the students think that we should bring forth to the school committee. And the number one most voted on was payments, so including like parking passes, student activities, sports, and etc. And then the next most, with 344 votes, was mental health support for students. So I thought that was really interesting. If you flip the page, some suggestions that we kind of pulled out that we thought were really unique from students. They clicked the other box and they decided that they wanted to type their own suggestion, which we really liked. One student said, quote, less paper usage since it's more difficult to get writing work done with paper compared to Google Docs. A second one, quoted from the student, improving all types of communication within the district and school. And a third quote from the student, graduation requirement of a health course, either a term with freshman foundations or a full semester. A few sessions of PE is not enough. And then a couple suggestions that we got multiple times from students were improving school lunches and portions. Kids will always, that's always an answer that we expected, but and then some students had some negative feedback on the new start end times. They believe that students paid off more when they got an early start to the day and got a earlier start to their afternoon with academics and extracurriculars. And the last final one was more access to guidance for students. So students were feeling that they weren't getting a lot of help that they needed, guiding through college, guiding through classes, and just like their well-being, which I thought was really important. And then we asked if they thought this survey was helpful, and now, with students, it's going to be either a yes or a no, or they have some different suggestions, so we did ask that. And we also asked, does sharing your ideas with the school committee make you feel more involved? And so 75.4% of students said yes, they did want us to continue sharing their ideas. I didn't get to print out all of them, but a couple students said, I have different suggestions. One of them you'll see on the paper next to the pink dot says, no, because nothing will change, which I also think is really important to bring up because student voices, I'm very passionate about my student voice. So I just really hope that these students will be able to express their student voices as they go through the rest of their career in high school, but also they'll be able to utilize us student representatives for their student voice. And I take any questions or comments if you'd like.
I just absolutely love this. Really, really fantastic work. I particularly love the comment. See, in the hospital where I work, right, we use an electronic medical record system. All I listen to my peers complaining about is how much harder it is on the computer. So I particularly love the comment where they said, why are you giving us stuff on paper? It's much easier to do on the computer. So I have bright hopes for the future.
Yeah, I did think that was really interesting since I think a few years ago we were all complaining about why do we have everything on Chromebooks now? But I guess students are passionate about saving the earth. So, yeah.
So last week I was at the school committee conference down on the Cape, and one of the things I attended was talking about this, interacting with the school committee, with the student advisory council or student advisory committee or board, whatever the official name is. And they said if we look at JIB in our student handbook there of our laws, we are required to meet with, the school committee is required to meet with the student advisory council every 2 months while school's in session. Like we come to you, we sit down or meet together and listen to what you have to say. So what was talked about, what a lot of towns do that do this, a lot of people didn't know that we had to do this. A lot of towns that do this said that they usually meet before a school committee meeting, and no cameras, stuff like that, so the students don't feel like they're so they're going to say something that's going to be thrown up on YouTube or something. And they say it usually works well, the flow of ideas, talking back and forth, and then having that every couple months where you're going to see us and talk to us and that we're going to be listening and such like that, that hopefully we can get more in touch with the actual students that we're here representing.
Yeah, for sure. And when we're also at our delegate assembly, they also go over a lot of legal stuff that honestly I didn't even know personally as a student representative, and that our, as we call our server bill, SRVR, about getting students voting rights, has been passed back and forth between the House and the Senate, and it's just we're finding it hard to move past the bill turning into a law. It was a really long time. But some students in Boston actually said that they themselves convinced their school committee to be able to have a vote. And so students in Cambridge have been voting on their school committees all through this school year, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, there are a lot of things that honestly I didn't really know that. That's a great thing to bring up.
And I think it's very helpful having you here. Was it the last meeting that we had where there was some conversation about like a requirement or a test? We were talking about like nationally or through the state or whatever to get graduation, and we were getting some feedback firsthand from your counterpart, and it was really great having you at the meeting.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll continue with new business. So we have our what representatives here this evening? Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon or evening at this point. Chris Judd, I'm the president, Slight of Us, who she is our new grant director. And so thank you for everybody tuning in on the TV and the web. And thank you to Dr. Provost for inviting us and to the committee members. We really appreciate it. So I asked that we'll go into our funded grants, but I just wanted to kind of highlight the last time I spoke to you, we really talked about what is, and I was brand new and all these exciting things. Well, I also want to let you know that we're currently in the process of doing a strategic plan. And as part of that, once we get it, I'll present it to you all and let you see it. It's about 15 pages right now, so hopefully it'll be there But some of the biggest things that came out of it was for the SWOT analysis. First of all, we really didn't have a large group of people. We had about 73 people that took to our survey, and we did our best to get it out into the community, so we might do another survey down the road. But the biggest piece is the impact that the what has in terms of strengths on the community and the school committee and the school community. So we're pretty excited about that. But the weaknesses are things that we already know, right? Limited visibility and awareness. Not everybody knows. And to be honest, we also get really confused. People get confused with us and the scholarship committee. So, or the organization around scholarships. So they get excited, they say, hey, we gave money to the what, and it was really the scholarship fund. So maybe something that comes out of that, we either ask them to change their name or we change our name, we'll figure it out. But the other opportunity piece is the community outreach that we have. So those are the things that we're going to look at and expand on. But the big piece is that we have two major fundraisers. The one is the Fall Fest. I hope some of you came this fall. It was our second one, and it was huge. By comparison, it was more people than last year, which is good. And then we have our gala. So we had it last year on February 14th. We're doing it again, February 14th. It just happens to hit right on the weekend, which is great. So we would love to have you all come and participate. It's huge. Last year we brought in $32,000, and all of that goes right back into the community. And so I'm going to give it back to my colleague here, and she can kind of tell you what was funded.
Thank you, Chris. So this November, we're pleased to let you guys know that we were able to fund 4 different grants. I believe you've got the handout that outlines all the grants that we provided. The first is for our kids book collection. We were able to fund a number of sets of these books for the Stony Hill Elementary School, and these focus around social and emotional learning for the teaching staff to be able to strengthen that skill set in their classrooms. The next we're pleased to be able to provide is the recess improvement at the Wilbraham Middle School. And not only does this help the middle school, but many of our schools are used by our community for kids to run around on the playground, get some energy out. So this one, even though it is at the middle school, we really felt like this helped our community. So we're funding an installation of 2 new basketball hoops and helping to redo the basketball courts at the middle school. The third is another one for the middle school, which is a multi-tiered 3-year support for the school store. We felt that this was important as it helps to reward our students, but it also is a program that encourages them with their skill sets. Students manage the school store, so it teaches them about customer service. They're helping with the fundraising for the school store. It helps them with some of the basic math skills and managing an inventory. So there's outlined on this sheet is how we're going to be funding this for the next 3 years, with the school then starting to pick up the funding as we tier off. The fourth is a district-wide elementary school program for bringing our favorite pastime back to our youth. So it's a baseball program, and it is a set of equipment that will circle around the elementary schools for them to be able to teach more about baseball. So we were able to invest $11,700 into the school this fall, and we're looking forward to seeing more grant requests come in and see what else we can provide for. Any questions about the grants?
I just got a couple. So this is just what you gave out in November?
Correct.
Correct? That's amazing. That's great. And I assume every month you have different grants that go out, some micro grants, some a little bigger?
Like every 3 months,
3
we will,
months?
yeah. So we're trying to space it out, and that's part of the strategic plan. You know, we've had some schools ask for some big capital, and so with that capital comes, you know, one school takes $26,000, and we can't. So we're trying to cap them at like $5,000 now going forward, And then you have, for instance, the middle school store. I talked to Dr. Provost and said, because we funded this probably the last 5 years, and it's just not sustainable to keep coming back to ask for grants for that. So there really needs to be a process within the school to, and with you all, right? If it's PBIS and that's what the committee and the school department really wants to do, then you should really fund PBIS, and this is a great way of doing it. So.
Excellent. And do you take any of the money that you raise per year and you put it away into like a trust to build up?
Great question. That's our goal. So we have $86,000 in a trust, and it's sitting there making money. But we want to keep it there. And we talked to Dr. Provost because we don't want to get it mixed with the scholarship fund, right? So, but we want to recognize. So we talked about the last meeting. We talked about really celebrating those kids. I think we were talking about what you do when nobody's looking awards. And so for the juniors and seniors, we do a $500 disbursement so if you go to college, right? But for the younger kids, maybe a plaque, or I know that we get very excited when our kid has a piece of paper and it just says Student of the Month, right? So give that kid a plaque, a medal, or something for doing something kind when nobody was looking, or doing something extraordinary. And so we have to figure that out, but that's something that we want to do. And then, but yes, to your point, we do want to do that. So our hope is when we bring in 32 grand, we want to put 15 of it away and 15 out into the community. We had a hard time doing that this last time because we had committed to finishing the Mile Tree Library. So we had to take all the funds that we raised and gave that back. So.
Yeah. And one last question. The scholarship committee, what is their name?
I'm not even sure, but I know it's Wilbraham Hamden Academic. I'm not sure, but do you know Dr. Provost?
I believe it may be the same name. I think that's the reason why.
That's the problem, yeah.
They're
so
both academic trusts, and it's the same name.
It's like that, but yeah. So we got to fix one. We're Inc. We're the Wilbraham. Yeah, we're the Inc. one, but we're gonna have to figure out maybe rebrand ourselves a little bit or something because it's confusing to people. So.
What?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you say you have a $5,000 limit per year for school?
No, we're looking at $5,000 limit per grant. So I used to work in the grant world, and so we're trying to figure out. We have someone on the board in our committee, but we're just trying to get very specific. Maybe after the fall fest or the winter gala, after we bring in a larger amount of money, we can say, okay, this is where our $5,000 grants are. Maybe in the fall when we have the smaller end, we can do the smaller grants or multi-tiered grants. And then, one of the things, communicating with Dr. Provost on a regular, he has some great ideas coming from, where he came from in Northampton and what they've done with the multi-tiered grants and kind of saying you'll do it. So that's kind of the idea that we got together. We worked together to say, this is a great idea for the middle school store. Let's tier it so that they know it's coming and they know kind of what they have to do and give them some time to come up with a plan.
Thank you.
I just want to note that we just received survey results from students saying that one of their greatest concerns was mental health support. 2 of the grants that you funded were right on point for mental health support, and another 2 had to do with teamwork and play, which is very supportive of mental health. So I think this was a home run, bringing our pastime back to youth, and so I just want to offer a round of applause.
I wish we could take credit. It's really the principals and the teachers who are applying for them. So.
Thank you.
One more quick thing, if I may. How many grant requests came in and how many did you fund?
For this fall, or when we reviewed them in November, 5 came in and we approved 4. The 5th one, while it was a novel idea, we thought that there might be other opportunities for them to accomplish what they were looking for that cost less money so that we could provide more grants and make the money stretch a little bit further.
Okay, thank you.
It should be noted that when we don't approve a grant, we give very specific reasons and we give very specific ways to reapply for it, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are going to continue with school improvement plans. We have the principal, John Roja, from Wilbraham Middle School.
Hello, everyone. So I am here, closer. I'm here to present the Wilbraham Middle School School Improvement Plan for years 2025 through 2027. One of my teachers is right there, so she's going to judge me the whole time. I'll make sure we go quick, but we're thorough. So, if you, Aaron, can you just, so the first part of the presentation tonight talks about some of the successes we had on our previous plan. One of those issues was around our participation in the Rethinking Discipline initiative, and that drastically reduced our suspension rates over the past several years to the point where I believe 4 or 5 years ago we were in the 70s for a number of suspensions. Last year we were 8, which because of that, kids are in class more, kids are not out of school, kids are more engaged, which I think includes some of the mediation strategies we put into place, some of the other positive things that we've done that our teachers have helped with as well. The second part from a previous plan was really the creation or the origins of our data team. We had never had really an organized official data team, so we've really laid the foundation for an effective use of data and the screenings that we do with the kids, and that's a credit to our interventionists and our counselors and our ETO and then Jake Hulsberg and our school psychologist. So there's a lot of hands in that are making a difference. I think some of that is also being able to look at what we do well and what we can do better. I think some of the results are pretty clear. I think Dr. Provost had talked previously about even our math achievement scores in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade went up. I think our 6th grade math achievement scores went up 26% last year. 7th grade went up 10%. So there's something that's working. So I think that's the foundation that we can build off. And the last piece was developing more positive and incentive-based activities for the kids, increasing the outlook of school climate. We made some marginal successes there, and that's something I think we'll continue to focus on. So the ongoing challenges that I think we face and what creates the plan for the next 2 years really is around professional development and creating effective use of our time. We spent a lot of time last year, actually as part of the Rethinking Discipline grant, we brought in a woman named Gwen Bass, who really focuses on trauma-informed classrooms. So while that is an important piece of what we do, it is a piece of what we do. And so the more that we can balance the academic needs, how do we differentiate to try and meet some of our higher needs learners and make that a more effective classroom setting, that should be some of our focus. And I think the other major issue that we need to focus on is our chronic absenteeism. I'll get into that when we move on. So looking ahead to the school improvement plan, we need to develop, again, proactive schedules. We need to be thoughtful about what our data is telling us, both from a climate lens, a behavioral lens, and an academic lens. And so I think we've put some things into place over the last couple of years to really build on. So our first goal is our higher needs student performance. So really what we're looking to do is increase using a 10% point increase for our students with disabilities, our lower income students, our EL learners. So, I mean, that should, I think 10% is a fair goal. But I think we need to really put some things into place where, or build on what we've already done to meet that need. Some of that includes, like last year, starting with our wind blocks and our tiered interventions. So there are opportunities for kids to get more support outside of the classroom and smaller groups, both from a social emotional lens, but also from the academic lens, reading, writing, math fluency is one that we are working on this year as well. That also includes, I applied for over the summer through DESE, and one of the commissioners' report was the Inclusion and Access Network, and they accepted us. I had a phone call with them next week, but it really is developed, it's kind of a coaching model to enhance our teacher and para relationships and co-teaching, and what does it mean to be better as an inclusion classroom. So that's another piece that will help our high need students. And lastly is, again, using our data more effectively to target those kids, their performance, their screening scores, things like that. Next one. Second goal, as I mentioned before, is chronic absenteeism. We used the goal of, the target goal of 7.8%, which is what the state had provided as a target goal. We didn't miss, if we look at our building-based accountability for the past year, we did pretty well, but this was a shortfall for us, where in previous years we had done better. So using that 7.8% as they did would be our target. We ended up at 10.1% last year. So in order to drop that rate to a more acceptable rate, which is actually 0, but that's not going to happen, it's using our weekly meetings, it's collaborating with families, it's talking to kids about what are the obstacles that are causing them to be out, what are the community issues that are causing them to be out. Sometimes it's family issues, sometimes it's social issues. There are lots of different reasons the kids don't come to school, and we know if they don't come to school, they're not learning, and what else they might be doing while they're not in school. So we're having more regular meetings, more communication and collaboration with families to try and establish both a reason but also a solution for how we can get kids back into school at a much more effective rate. Some of it is looking at behavioral data as well, because I think what we try to do is effectively use the kids' reasonings when they come talk to us about why they want to miss class or what's going on in their class, and then try and work with them to solve the problems, tying that back to the discipline initiatives that we did, mediation with kids, so that they're not missing class, so they're not saying, you know, I'm getting bullied, so I'm not coming to school. All of those things are tied together, which in turn, if they're in there, makes it a more effective and higher achieving kid. So,
what is the definition of chronic absenteeism?
10% of your absences for the school year, so 18 absences in the year puts you at 10%. Yep. Goal number 3 is again to, as we talked about in our previous goal, is to look at our school climate and culture, and the goal being to, which are up there, but not in my notes, there are certain questions that are asked in the vocal survey, and the vocal survey is the survey given to 8th grade students after their last day of their science MCAS. And so in our building it's only 8th graders, but it talks about safety, it talks about engagement, it talks about the environment, and so some of those questions about bullying, some of the questions about do they feel safe, those are the areas that we wanted to target in this plan. And one of the ways that we're doing that is we were able to secure funding for training active bystanders, which is a kid-run. It's actually a wind block with one of our teachers who's running it, so they meet 3 days a week. They started, I think, 2 weeks ago. Right now, the 7th and 8th grade students who were trained last year are going into 6th grade advisories and teaching lessons to the kids. So it's kids running it for other kids. Their plan is to be done either mid-December or late December, and then move on to some other grades. That's not just a middle school process, but I know Sewell Road trained and Green Meadows trained 4th and 5th grade last year, I believe. So those 5th graders that are now with us in 6th grade, there's a smaller portion of those kids that are trained as well. So that's one thing that I think will help quite a bit. I think the other that we did with our climate team was, I know I keep referring back to the Rethinking Discipline grant, but it was great for us. We were able to purchase the Tier 1 version of Character Strong, which our climate team met over the summer with our counselors and mapped out the entire year of advisory lessons from Character Strong, so teachers could easily access that. They didn't have to do a lot of the prep work for that. I will say advisory lessons or advisory time gets hijacked quite a bit with other things that are going on, but they're always there. Our counselors who are running Tier 2 and Tier 3 SEL WIN blocks have asked for additional funding to unlock those portions of Character Strong, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do to make sure that our kids are heard. Things like restarting our student diversity group and equity team, adding student voice to the school climate team. So little things like that which we can do, which goes to what we were talking about earlier, is when they feel more included in the process and more valued, we have a more effective community. And then the only other thing that's not on here, which when this was written over the summer, is our focus on college and career readiness. And so that will be also something we're working on, which is not formalized in this plan, but it's definitely something that not only do we have to do, but it's something that's important for us. Darcy? Any questions for me? Try to be as brief as possible.
I don't have a question, but an observation. Reducing suspensions, it is an appropriate goal, but the real goal is changing the behaviors so that the kids aren't disrupting their own education and other fellow students' education. And your data says to me, because their academic growth continues to grow when these suspensions are reduced, you're doing something right.
Yeah, I think it's all connected, but it also is, in a lot of cases where there's conflict between kids, is getting them to help each other manage that conflict. And I think another thing that's not really measurable within that sort of framework is the work that the teachers do every day when they're having these conversations with kids that doesn't show up in our Swiss data, it doesn't show up in our Redeker data. Even our 6th graders our 6th grade teachers have time when they keep kids in and they have conversations with them. So it's discipline per se, but it's also establishing that connection with the kid and a relationship with that kid so that 2 years from now, when something's going wrong, they know they have an adult they can go to. And I think that's happening every day all over the building in a really positive way.
And I think your data shows that, and I repeat myself, you guys are doing something right. Because when you get academics growing and suspensions shrinking, you've got a formula there that's working. Keep it up.
I guess I would just ask you, is there anything else that you need from us to help you continue with the improvements that you've been doing? Go ahead, lay it on us.
Yeah, I mean, if there's more space available, that'd be great. I think some of the stuff is a funding issue, like everything. I think it's, if we had more funding for some of the things that we've been reducing, some of our subscription computer-based software things that we're robbing Peter to pay Paul at times, and it's not anybody's fault, it's just the way that it goes. I think one thing that would be really helpful is to hear the positives that the staff teachers are doing a good job, and they need to be recognized as much as possible. And then, you know, I think it's again, the physical facility and building, which I know you're going to get into, but it's hard to continuously overcome obstacles in the physical plant that impact learning, that impacts the space, impacts the cleanliness, that impacts the air quality. All of those things, if they were all able to be addressed, would make it an even more safe place for kids and for staff. I don't think that's an overnight solution, but you asked what you could do, and
Yeah, no,
that's one thing that I would continue to advocate.
I have talked to, I know a bunch of different teachers and see the great things that are happening. You're going to be missed in the drama. Yep. But yeah, so I mean, kudos to you and the team. You're doing a magnificent job, and we understand the other limitations that you just spoke to, and hopefully we can find some solution to that over the years.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Again, we are just putting ideas out there, and these guys are following through, and putting kids in place to be successful.
So how did you do?
I'll give him his notes tomorrow.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
So we're going to continue with communication to the select boards regarding Wilbraham Middle School. So there's a discussion and possible vote.
So, I guess spurred by Mark's question, there's a question about whether Wilbraham Middle School is, you know, how is it going to fit the needs of the school district into the future, or will it? I guess I would be a horrible English teacher. My mother was an English teacher. Like, I would give away the end of the novel at the beginning. You know, I mean, the long story short, you know, it may have not been the best practice for us to have submitted to the accelerated repair program, and we probably would have been much more appropriate to apply to the core building program from Massachusetts, the MSBA. I understand this a little bit better now, and I don't know, should I just read this document we did? So, you know, I think John and I mostly, but all of us at the MASC meeting took whatever opportunities we could avail ourselves of to try to learn about these building processes and, you know, how do you fix a badly broken building, you know, and the state does come and help. You know, like the first thing that I didn't know that I learned there was that core building program doesn't just help you build new buildings. They help you first figure out what you really need to do. And if it's a renovation and addition, or if it's just a renovation repair, or if it's a new building, then they help guide you through that process going forward. We're looking at significant investment just to do the windows and doors in the middle school building, so I think it's appropriate to start asking this kind of serious question. The other thing I learned that is very important is that I think that we will never be successful with a big project if we don't start out with the support of the select boards for both towns. And then, you know, that begins with, and what we ultimately need, of course, is the support of the people in both towns for the kids, for what's needed for the kids. So I tried to keep emotion and opinion and everything out of it, but to put together a bunch of facts, because I know that as people talk about things, you know, everybody plays the chain of grapes game right down the line, you know, before you know it, you know, after you go down 10 people, we start with, we need to figure out what's wrong with the building to, you know, Mike says, we nothing else to do, we have to build a new building, and it's going to be a skyscraper with a swimming pool and bungee cord jumping and everything else, right? So here's what John, I think mostly John and I worked on this. My hope is that the school committee would agree to support sending this as a letter from the school committee to both select boards to kind of formally open the door in conversation to what is, without question, a long and arduous process. Okay. The recent MASC meeting has afforded us the opportunity to work on Selectman Ducey's question, will Wilbraham Middle School meet the middle school education demands of our school district for the next 20 to 30 years? In addition to the many educational sessions, we were fortunate to be able to speak with other colleagues, including the superintendent of Long Meadow at the meeting. We were also able to ask some clarification questions from MSBA leadership. Interestingly, they weren't like there to answer our questions, but they just happened to be giving a talk, so, you know, at the end of the talk, you go running up and talk to people, right? Fundamentally, answering this question breaks down into two considerations, building capacity and building condition. Evaluating building capacity is straightforward. The WMS building is 99,750 square feet in size. It was built in 1968 as a junior high school, grades 7 to 8, with 5 classrooms for each core subject and no special education classes. Currently it serves as a middle school. There are 2 teams of approximately 100 students per grade level, which means that 6 classrooms are needed for each core subject. The lack of special education classes in the original design is likely due to the fact that construction was completed 4 years before the passage of Massachusetts Special Education Law, Chapter 766, and 7 years before the passage of the landmark federal special education law, the IDEA. In order to accommodate the additional core subject classes required when the school was converted to a middle school and provide for the needs of students with disabilities who now have the right to attend public school, an additional 14 classes have been created within the original footprint of the building. This has been accomplished by dividing classrooms, converting the library into classroom spaces, and turning offices and closets into classrooms. The school was originally designed to accommodate 2 grades and truly can only accommodate 2 grades comfortably. As of November 1st, there are 589 middle school students in WMS. According to NESDEC's most recent student predictions for our school district, we're expecting that number to climb to 773 over the next 10 years. Based on these numbers, conservatively, the middle school needs at least a 50% increase in classroom capacity. It's worth noting that this is not equivalent to an increase in overall square footage of the building, as there are large common areas like the gym and cafeteria that may not need expansion. Building condition is a bit more challenging to evaluate. WMS was built in 1968. On the positive side, the roof was replaced in 2020, thus has another 15 years of expected life. But other than the roof, I believe we are all aware WMS has several needs. The feasibility study conducted in 2015 noted that several building systems, including water and sanitary systems, the HVAC system, the electrical service, walls and insulation, windows and doors, the fire protection system, and the kitchen require extensive upgrades. Additionally, many more building modifications would be required to provide accessible spaces for students, staff, and visitors. The cost to address all of these deficiencies would surely be many tens of millions of dollars. We were just invited into the MSBA Accelerated Repair Program for windows and doors. We are also aware that there are serious air quality problems in the building, but at this point, a study is yet to be conducted to help us understand what needs to be done to correct that problem. And most recently and urgently, we have learned that there are problems with the asbestos-containing floor tiles in a few rooms cracking, pulling up from the floor. Unfortunately, during the floor tile assessment, some crumbling of the walls was also noted. Bottom line, we don't know the potential full cost of updates and repairs needed for the building at this time. But we could get a much better idea if we have a facility assessment study performed. The MSBA Accelerated Repair Program will only help towns with roof replacements, windows, and doors. For the first time, the program has also been expanded to help with geothermal heat pump upgrades starting just this year. The MSBA Core Building Program partners with towns and school districts for building expansions, extensive renovations, repairs, and new building construction. Unfortunately, if we want WMS to be considered for the Core Building Program, we will need to withdraw the application for windows and doors made to the Accelerated Repair Program. Given these considerations, it is clear WMS needs far more attention that can be provided by the Accelerated Repair Program. It may be wise at this point to withdraw our application for Accelerated Repair for WMS so we can apply to the Core Building Program. One thing that is nice about the Core Building Program, we do not need to know what the solution is, just be able to describe our problems and needs. If invited in, the The MSBA will work with us through the feasibility study to help us come up with potential solutions. Once again, if we wanted more data to help inform this decision, we could have a facility assessment study performed. While a facility assessment study is significantly less expensive than a feasibility study, we would still have to invest in a feasibility study if we were ever invited into the core building program. We're looking for the input from both the Wilbraham and Hamden select boards on this decision. While WMS is currently owned by Wilbraham, potential solutions proposed by the MSBA may need to be regionally owned. Discussion.
Well said.
I have questions.
John wrote the part.
So we have applied for the accelerated program, but does the MSBA reassign you to the core program should the needs of the building exceed what our initial ask was?
No, if you are invited to the accelerated repair and wish to change to core program, you have to withdraw your application from repair and then resubmit. The accelerated repair is done on once every 2 years basis, so we applied last year. The next opportunity to apply would be not next spring, but the spring after. The core program, on the other hand, is annual. I think they may even have to be more than one, but they have at least one opportunity a year to get into the core program. The window for that opens in December, I believe, and I think applications are due by January.
But if we decided, let's just say, if we decided to move forward with the accelerated program with the building, and when they came in to do, I would imagine, some further evaluation, and they determined that the needs of the building exceeded that of the accelerated program, would the MSBA move us into the core program, or are you removed from the accelerated and then have to reapply
My
for the core
understanding,
program?
my understanding is that that is not what happens in terms of the feasibility study for the accelerated repair.
So I can, excuse me, I can speak to that a little bit. And this sort of is what I was going to share with you in the next point on the agenda, so I'll just share it now. So I had a call with the MSBA folks just to kind of check in on some of these things. In the accelerated repair program, the schematic design that they do, that work is very narrowly focused on specific aspects. And part of that's about a procurement issue, as far as how they procure the people that they assign to you for the projects, but also the nature of the program. So when they do the schematic design, they look at the doors and windows. They look at a few other things related to that. So if the level of repair would exceed the thresholds for needing to do more complete ADA accommodations and retrofits, they factor that in. But that's really sort of the limit of it. They don't look at the other systems and determine that this is a good assessment of doors and windows. They don't make that judgment at all. That's our responsibility to do ahead of time, or to just, participate in the core program where it is, which is an evaluation. So as they go through schematic design, they're looking at, what do we need to do for doors and windows? In our case, that's what we apply for, and a few other related things, but pretty minor. Making a pretty narrow focus, because again, that's part of why I think the word accelerated is in it. They're trying to get to that and get on to the next thing.
Thank you.
So with the Wilbraham Middle School, it's always been, the building as it's being used is overcrowded, okay, to a certain extent. I do have to say that the administration there and the teachers there do such a great job that the students don't feel that they are overcrowded. All right, let's just make that point. The kids walk into a classroom that used to be a closet. I don't think they realize it used to be a closet. I think the students feel safe and good, at least from what my middle schooler has been telling me over the past couple of years. So the question is, do we do something to the middle school to add more classrooms? Do we do something with the student population so that we don't need as many classrooms? Or the option that's being presented here, I guess, is build a new middle school or start the process to build a new middle school.
That is not what's being proposed here, Sean. Applying to the core building program means that the state will work with us to figure out what needs to be done to update the building. It could be the process concludes in a recommendation for a new building. It could be. Okay, but, and, you know, if you ignore capacity and you go through that 2015 study, I mean, if the building continues to be used, it will need tens of millions of dollars of repairs, which is fine. But I think we recently heard the building might be worth somewhere around $20 million. So, you know, a reasonable person does start to scratch their head and say, are the repairs a higher amount of money than the building? But that's where the towns and us and the, you know, we come together. But until we've been invited in and the feasibility study's been done, we don't have the facts to make any of those decisions. And I think it's important that nobody steps forward too quickly with inaccurate information. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Sean, but I did want to make sure
You
that...
didn't mean to interrupt me. And it is an option being presented here that it might be that we need a new middle school.
But the core program, I believe, it's like renovation, it is additions, or a new building. It's not necessarily, the core program is not to build a new building. I think there's a lot of in-between space between.
What I was trying to get at was, what is not addressed by this letter is there something that we can do to address by using the population? For example, we had talked about moving the 8th grade and 9th grade to the high school at one point. Now we have some 7th and 8th grade to the high school. We do have some 8th graders there now, of which my son is one of them, in the Innovation Career Pathways program. There are so many options, and though this letter is really nice, I think it's something that shouldn't we make it more clear about what steps that what options that we have, what steps we have to go through to get those. Can't we go and, right now we have before us a way of improving the windows and the doors, correct, at the middle school. And it's interesting that now we're having this conversation of like, hey, we got approved for this, now we have to sit back and say, do we want to do it? And rather than decide if we want to do it at the beginning and then going down that path. So we need to decide this, we need to decide this fast, but I think we need to decide this as a committee first, on what our recommendation is. I think we need to have input from the towns. We have a planning committee that is together with representatives from both towns. That would be a good place to bring it up and start at least getting it refined to what are the options, what are the steps that we need to go through, and also how do we address this that we have before us, a way of saving half the money roughly of what some repairs to that building would be. Do we want to stop that and then delay anything being done to the building so we can figure out if that's something that we really want to do? It just seems we set forth this request to help us with the doors and the windows, and now we're second guessing ourselves, it seems. But yes, if we do get that done, we will need to continue to use the building. But I don't see, when they decided to create this building here that we're in right now, I believe from the inception or when it started to when it was finished was at least 10 years. Correct? Yeah, you got
the timeline that ended up being for Long Meadow. And once again, we're not where we're seriously talking about a new building here, but their timeline was 6 years from application to the core program to students walking in.
I think it's running 5 to 7 years now.
So,
okay, so it's less time, but still, I'll throw this out there. What will education look like in 5 years? What will education look like in 10 years? So if we can fix now some of the issues that we're having in the building, and as other issues come up, continue to fix them, and get some help from the state on some of the big ones, like the envelope of the building, because we are going to continue to use that building, you know, for a period of time, I don't understand why stopping that and not doing anything and then kind of going back to the drawing board when we're close to the finish line, at least on some things.
I'm not sure if Mr. Juicy is going to speak tonight, but he will be able to correct me if I'm wrong, because he's here. I believe what prompted the question is the commitment that being in the core program means for the future of the building. So the windows and doors have an expected life of 30 years. And so I believe the question was prompted by, are you comfortable that 30 years from now that will still be a appropriate middle school?
I thought it was that we would be using that building, whether we use it for a middle school or not. If we move district offices there or something like that, we would be using it for educational purposes, correct?
Correct.
So I mean, okay, and if we don't, then we would have to pay back a certain part of that, right?
Correct.
But a part of that, not the whole part. So if we use it for 10 years and we don't use it for the other 20 years, we still saved a third, right? So, and then with inflation and stuff like that, how much a dollar's worth now, how much is a dollar worth in 10 years? I don't see why we wouldn't at least do something to the building. I'm sure we can find a use for it. We did use the TWB for years after pulling the classes out of there and put them back into this building. I think this letter, it's got some great information, some great history, but when it comes down to it, this is a decision that we have to make. What are we doing with our students? Where are we putting our students? And then what's the future of education and how is this going to fit into that future of education? So we need to do these simultaneously because we already have approval on a 2-year schedule, right? It's 1 year they can do them, then next year there won't be any, and the year after we can do them again. So that would be delaying doors and windows again for another 2 years, right? But we need the doors and windows on this building. It is a building that is in our repertoire, and it is a building that we can keep using, should keep using, at least by people here saying at least 6-7 years. I think that, isn't this kind of kicking the responsibility, like let the towns decide? I mean, shouldn't we talk with the towns, see what they're saying, and then we decide as a school committee? Isn't that our job, what to do with the facilities and how we're going to educate our kids in the future? What's our plan for educating our kids in the future? So, do we want a new middle school? Do we want to repair the middle school that's there? Do we want to move some students around into different buildings? I mean, it's something that we need to decide ourselves, correct?
Can I ask you, so you had mentioned the innovation career pathways. How many students participated this year?
We have 20.
So we moved 20 from the middle school that came to the high school. John, if you don't mind putting you on the spot for just a moment, you had spoken, you had mentioned when Sean had asked, you know, is there anything that we can do for you? What are your needs? And you mentioned space. Could you speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, so. Can you?
Yeah, so so a lot of the building is used in ways that it's not designed for, and we're using classrooms that are libraries and storage rooms that are now classrooms and offices that are now classrooms. I think as we moved 20 kids from 8th grade, the 8th grade was a smaller group to begin with. I think last year's group, which is now 9th grade, was 215 kids. The current 6th grade is 220, I believe. So although we took some out of 8th grade, the bigger groups are still behind. So that number will increase. And by the time that 6th grade, doing the look back, at the time that this current 6th grade is in 8th grade, I think that the number across the building, if we don't do additional pathways or some other solution, we'd be looking at probably 650, which is
years, you're going to have 773 children. So that's almost 200 more than you have now. How's that going to look in the current building footprint?
It's not possible.
Not possible.
Well, I shouldn't say that. We could divide the gym into several different classrooms.
Okay.
And John, how
We
many,
can put up tents.
what's the capacity for, do we have room for 230 additional students for innovation pathways? Here at the high
So
school?
really the question is how many kids can you bring to high school with, regardless of the program? When we studied this as part of the planning committee, we said 1 grade is the max, you know, and we were basing that on the sort of average class size of about 200, which is now getting to be kind of low, looking at the classes that are starting to roll into the middle school. So I think you could conceivably bring more or less 200 students into the high school, either as a whole grade or through different programs. That's a question you asked me.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I understand that the building is going to be the building. It's not going to change, at least grow more rooms overnight. But I'm saying if there's something we can do with that student population, and has it been successful so far? I mean, I guess it's still early to tell. My son is one of the 20 students that are here, and he's loving the high school. He is talking to me about some of the issues that some of the kids are having, and we talk about it every day. But isn't that also part of the issue, is that if we could put some of the students, take that, 200 students out of the high school, let's just say, for instance, the 8th grade, moving it up to Minnechaug here, that would help out, right? And now, don't get me wrong, I mean, if someone said we're going to give you a new middle school and the state's going to pay 100% of it, I'm all over it, right? But if anything, I think the state's going to pay half, and we're going to have to pay half. And new construction versus construction of a building that's already there, or renovation of a building that's already there. I think that as a committee, we need to come up with a plan or a couple of different plans that we agree on, and then bring them to the people and see what the people think. But I think that we need to do more of this work instead of taking the work and throwing it off to the different select boards.
I mean, I personally would like to know the select board's opinions on it.
They've all given opinions, and we can sit and we can talk to them, but have them come here, or better
And I
yet,
would
us
like
go there.
feedback from other places.
I think Tim's been waiting this talk for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I have. We're talking about a building that is insufficient for its purposes right now. And what I heard, what is news to me in this, is that there are more problems than we're aware of. We had to close for a week. Mold. Well, the mold is coming from water getting in someplace. Now we're talking about, well, the walls are little. We don't know if that building is going to be usable and safe for the students and the employees in that building. We need to do what this is trying to tell us to do. Let's take a look at it. Let's do a study. Let's find out what are the real problems with that building, aside from the fact that it's insufficient space. And I know from experience back in Springfield that you can renovate an old building and add an addition under that program, and it works. And we'll deal with the space problems, and we'll deal with the health problems, but we first got to know, what are they? And I think Mr. Ducey's made a critical point. We have to look at all of our schools and what kind of shape they're in. And is this a configuration that is going to work? But right now, the immediate problem is in middle school, because that clearly has problems that need correcting. The safety, with the air quality, the mold. Now we're talking about tiles that contain asbestos, flaking. I mean, that's serious stuff. So I think we go forward with this and do an initial study. Because if we just do the doors and the windows, come to find out, it doesn't do anything to make that a healthier, safer place. Actually, it may even exacerbate the problem, because if you seal the doors and the windows, you got no fresh air leaking in, and our univents aren't doing their jobs. So, I mean, we have to be responsible here, but we can't be responsible shooting in the dark. We need a study. We need to know what that building needs. Is it renovatable? Is there space where you can add an addition to deal with the problem? No way anybody's going to turn your gymnasium into classrooms. Well, I suppose you could, but it doesn't make any educational sense to me. But that's my thought, and I want to make a motion that we go forward with the recommendation that is made in this paper.
I just need to ask this question. So the committee that exists in the present form was the same committee that we had last year, okay? The committee last year decided to ask for these
Sean, I'm just gonna-
renovations.
Before we continue, we just have a motion.
It
on the
wasn't
floor.
seconded, so,
Well,
okay.
is anyone going to second that?
I'll second.
Okay, question, just
Yeah.
formally.
So, I mean, I'm just saying, so this is the same committee that said, hey, listen, we need to go, we need to get the doors and we prepared, we need to get the windows repaired, and this is something that we've been talking about. We've known about the issue about asbestos at the time of making this decision. So the time and energy and effort that has been put into getting us to the point where we can get these doors and windows done, now you're all saying, oh, wait a minute, let's just throw it aside and let's do a study to figure out, like, what do we need on the buildings? And if I was MSBA, the first thing I would say to you is, well, how are you going to educate your kids? What is your plan for educating your kids? Where are you going to put it? Are you trying to move the 8th grade to the high school? Are you doing more innovation career pathways, as is the new, as John has said, that's where education is going over the next 10 years, a lot more stuff like that. And then Lisa's shaking her head no, so she doesn't agree with that.
I think
So
we've
it's
had
like,
conversations for years about moving the 8th grade to the high school, and we've made this innovation pathway, and 20 kids went. So, and the building's been in need for many more years besides the conversation. So, I would like feedback from more than just select board too. I would like to know what the staff and John feel about it as well.
We can't forget that we received pretty vigorous and vicious feedback from both towns on the idea of moving the 8th grade to the high school. And that's the reason that they're not here now.
but there's 20 of them here as the pilot program to see how it's working, and we're going to get feedback from those parents and from those students.
And even if we move 200 students from the middle school to the high school, every single major system in the middle school is in need of severe repair or replacement.
So even if
The
we move
mechanism
yeah,
for doing
even if
that
we
is
move
through the
kids-
core program, because the state will then pay for half of that. If the building is deemed, yes, let's go. Although a lot of towns, they said at the talk at MASC, a lot of towns, they actually will give them a choice. They're saying, after the feasibility study, they're like, okay, salvage the building, this is what you're looking at. Okay, new construction, this is what you're looking at. And then we as a committee can decide. And once again, this is not the recommendation, okay? I'm just trying to open a conversation to see where we stand with the select boards.
And
All right?
what I'm saying is, yes, all that is true. I agree with everything you just said. But what I'm saying is that how are we going to educate our children? Where are we going to educate it? What is our plan as a committee? I'm not waiting for MSBA to tell us, here's what you can do. I want us to decide, what do we want to do? What is our goal for
I think
for
the first
education?
goal would be an appropriate building for students and staff, right? Ones that people
Great,
are
but how many
teaching in
grades are we putting
classrooms.
in there? Are we going to have elementary K through 8 buildings?
That's
Is
what
that
we would have
something
to
that
do
we
a
want?
study
What's
for.
wrong with that? We had
No,
it ended.
I know, but what I'm trying to
It
say.
was okay.
I have no problem with that, but is that what we want? Right now, we haven't, as a committee, decided what we wanted, and we're wasting our time with going after, having MSBA meetings, and John and Doug and the team going and putting all this stuff together to apply for this stuff. It becomes successful, and now it's like, oh, wait a minute, now we gotta come up with the money for it. Hey, wait a minute, let's kick the can down the road. Let's, as a committee, decide how we want to educate. It's the best way to educate our kids, and then we can look at the other options and move from there. But right now, we're just going to be spinning our wheels. We're going to do the feasibility study, and then it's going to be like, well, now we want to do it this way. We're going to do a new feasibility study. We need to decide as a committee how we want to educate, or how we think the students should be educated. What's the best way within the constraints of the system that we have, and then we can figure out the buildings and such. But if we're really going to not accept the MSBA and relook at everything, then I think that as a committee, we need to decide and have more information out there about how we want this to go down over the next 5, 10 years. So then we can look, and the towns can look and say, well, if that's what you want to do, or maybe we don't agree with you. And then you can have that conversation. And then once we all decide how this is where we want to go, then, okay, what kind of buildings are we going to need for that? What kind of buildings do we have? What renovations do we need to do, or do we need a new building? But it seems like we're doing this all out of order, and we're wasting a lot of time of our administration on doing an amazing accomplishment of getting all 3 projects through, and now we're saying that some of those projects we're not going to do. It just seems very wasteful because we haven't made up our minds.
We can't go forward with the windows and doors if the town of Wilbraham decides not to support and borrow the necessary money for the project also. So I think we need to respect that while we are elected and you need to make decisions as to how we're educating our children, we are in a partnership with not just the administration of both towns, but everyone.
We are aware of that, and I'm just saying, but we need to decide how we want our things, what our plan is. We have no plan. And we're just spinning a lot of wheels.
Well, I think the school committee's been spinning wheels for quite some time on the middle school issue. This is not a new issue. We're on a hamster wheel. And I think that the longer we prolong, we say kick the can down the road again. Do we want to be having this discussion in 10 years? Mark.
Thank you. So I kind of opened up this hornet's nest, I think, a few weeks ago when I asked the question, as I was looking at approximately, what is it, $7 million repair we expect? I asked the question, is this building going to suit our students for the next 30 years? Before I go to the residents and encourage them voting in favor of this, they deserve an answer on that. And it raised a lot of questions. If we don't know the condition of this building or what needs to be done for this building over the next number of years, I'm not going to recommend it. I want to speak for my colleagues. I'm speaking strictly for myself. But I think we need to really do a deep dive into this building and really get an understanding before we ask the residents to spend $7 million of tax dollars.
Are the doors going to get better over that time?
Sean, we're not going to make a commitment to the building for the next 30 years. I can't make a commitment to the building for the next 30 years until I know what the cost of renovating it is. Because I think,
isn't this a little buyer's remorse? Like, oh, we got approved for these programs. Oh, the money's too much. We don't have that money right now. Let's find a way of just stalling and pushing it off. By saying, oh, we're going to use the building, and of course we're going to use the building.
I'm not here to argue.
How are we going to use the building?
I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to simply tell you what I feel. That we need to get a better understanding of what the plan is for this building over the next 30 years if we're going to ask the taxpayers to live with the building for the next 30 years. What's it going to cost us to maintain this? Is this the best way we can spend their money?
John or Doug? After Lisa?
I think Rich has been waiting to make a comment.
Oh,
No,
sorry.
I do believe that we need more information. I believe we need professional information. I don't know the exact timelines. In other words, if we do when these windows and doors will be done, but I'm sure if we're using our current windows and doors, when we start to, when we get the information back, they're gonna close, they're gonna shut, they're not perfect. So I think we should move the question to vote on what was proposed about sending this letter to, send the letter out and moving forward. It was Tim's proposal. A while ago, you made a motion.
Motion has been seconded.
Yes, so we vote on it. Is that good? Move the motion, something like that.
I think we need to make sure everyone's done the discussion before.
He's already made the motion to call the question.
Okay, I was also going to ask for feedback from John and
We get more
Doug.
feedback.
No, that's okay.
I can delay it.
Nope, so,
Because we're kind of repeating ourselves over and over again for the last 20 minutes or so. The same arguments have been
well,
made,
thanks
so.
to the committee. Yeah, don't know what to tell
It's like
you.
replay, so move on.
It is important that everyone.
Every
gets
2
their
weeks.
chance.
No, it is. I agree.
It's important. It's part of the process.
Okay.
In fact, we might even hear from
I was going to,
student representatives.
I actually was going to ask.
Who is
but
still
since-
hanging in there. I think it's
Yes.
so great that you actually hang in there for our meeting.
I've been itching to turn this mic on.
I actually had just turned to everybody here to ask for an opinion, but then it was called to question, so we do,
You spent a lot of time in the middle school, not too long ago. right?
I'm gonna say about 6 or 7 years ago, I stepped foot into that middle school for the first time, and I'll just attest to the fact that 6 or 7 years ago, I was also sitting in the library as a classroom. So, and all I can think of with my student mindset is how the students' education is being affected, but also how the students' physical health could be affected by that building by spending 7 hours a day in that building that contains such things that can make someone sick. So, and especially the teachers as well, that I know that some teachers spend 6 a.m. to 5 sometimes in those buildings, that it's just truly not safe for a person to be in. So obviously I know that I don't really deal a lot with budget, and I understand that's a big topic, but I think a betterment of the school, physical school environment is best for our students in general.
I'll withdraw my suggestion to move until we hear from new voices.
So, first of all, let me start by thanking Mr. Kennedy for, like the expression of exasperation. That's kind of like where I was when I first heard this question, because I was like, I'm here on my 4th year now. I was told the whole time we need to stay within our current buildings. The charge of the planning committee was do what you can to improve education without making any substantive changes to the collection of buildings that we already have in use. But then, as I thought more about it, I was like, well, maybe getting all 3 projects is just something that's forcing people to think about things that maybe they haven't thought about before. And, when I go into that building personally, it's hard. You see students learning in inappropriate spaces. You see that the whole building has a lack of light and air. It just feels like a heavy space. You don't have a library at all, which is an important component of learning. You don't have, large open spaces, which I think is kind of the wave of the future for building construction. And, what I know for a fact is that 10 years ago, there was a very comprehensive assessment of the building done, both that building and TWB. It's a document that's come up many times in the planning committee. It said that the entire plumbing system needed to be replaced. It said the entire HVAC system needed to be replaced. It said the electrical service was inadequate. It said the walls and insulation were inadequate. It said the fire protection system wasn't up to code. And that was 10 years ago. And I know none of those systems have been addressed in that time. The one system that I think was probably addressed is the ceiling, because the report said all the ceiling needs to be replaced. If, my Irish mother-in-law says it's an ill wind that blows no good. the good of the mold is that we had to replace almost the entire ceiling system. So that is the one system out of all those recommendations that was replaced, has been replaced in the past 10 years. So now I think, if there is any chance that we can get a more appropriate learning space for the kids and the staff, I am willing to say, okay, you put me through a lot of work to get those MSBA approvals. In fact, Doug did most of the work, so let's be honest, you put him through a lot of the work. But I would say that it would be irresponsible for me as a superintendent not to at least explore the option of getting a more permanent and more appropriate solution for our kids.
No.
Josh, Lisa?
I would just say that one of the findings of my entry plan was that the current grade configuration makes it really challenging for us to consolidate and have strong special education programming, especially for our students who participate in substantially separate programs, just because we're changing every 2 years. And so that requires us to have a classroom for those students every 2 years. And it's really challenging for us to find special education teachers who are qualified and comfortable supporting those students. And so while that doesn't go directly to the question of the middle school, I do think that there is a correlation as those students will be moving into that building in not that long. And so I just think that's important for the committee to consider as you debate this question.
Again, that's very, very important. Is it going to be the policy of the school committee that we're going to have schools that have more grades in them? Or are we going to just replace the middle school and then have a 2 years a different building, 2 years a different building, 2 years a different building, 3 years a different building, and then off to Minnechaug? Is this something we need to come up with? How do we want to do it? Do we want to have, I said, do we want to do a K through 8 building and have all the grades? Is that what's going to be the best? If we're going to spend this money, what's our plan, people? If we're going to ask for this, we need to have a plan and say, ideally, this is what we want to do. Can we get there? And then that's where you go for the feasibility study. You don't just do a feasibility study when there is no plan, other than just to replace a building that isn't fitting our needs right now.
So we are somewhat constrained by the configuration of our regional school district, right? We are practicing regionalization at the middle school level, although we're not truly regionalized at middle school level because we have yet to have an amendment to the regional agreement passed, right? We are not regionalized for the grade schools, and also feedback we got from the town seemed to be very, and by, I mean town people, not town administrators, there's not really any interest in that. But I do agree with you, Sean, that it would, I hate this moving buildings every 2 years, which is why when I'm talking to people about elementary education, I'm like, Hamden's the place to be, man. They got the building, K through 5, right? But we can't, these are all very big pieces of pie. So we can't, I think, I had a conversation with Jonathan, we can't go after everything that would be best for the kids all at once. I mean, any town would definitely choke on that. I mean, we one step at a time, right? So what's our most desperate need, right?
Exactly, one step at a time, our most desperate need. We're acting out of desperation. We have no plan.
So all I was going to add is that one of the things we learned from talking to the officials from the MSBA, I think Dr. Gervasi might have already said this, is we don't need to have all of the answers. What we need to do is tell them what our problems are. So the grade configuration and the problems that it creates for special education is a problem. The many beyond end-of-life systems that are currently in the middle school is another problem. The projected increase in school-age population over the next 10 years is another problem. Those are the types of things that I imagine we would put in a statement of interest if you were all to direct us to do that. And it would give us an opportunity to think through that with people who know a lot more about buildings than we do, frankly, who can help us to come up with some solutions.
I'd like to offer an amendment to the motion, and instead of sending this letter to the select boards, maybe we send this whole idea and question about the middle school and school configuration to the planning committee that has school committee members from both towns and has select board members from both towns, where they can maybe start going through the information to find a path or an idea or at least a direction. Are we replacing a middle school, or are we replacing something bigger than that?
Is there a second? Okay, so I believe discussion. So Lisa, did you have anything to add? Okay. Anyone else?
Just as a summary, the purpose of this is to see if we're going to all agree with the selectmen to get, just if you'd like to engage in this bigger project. Something like this is all about.
I would agree with the intention, Rich. You know, I think as a committee, we would need to direct John and Doug to act on what is a potential consideration here, which would be to withdraw the one application and submit to the core program. One of the things I learned at MASC, talking to multiple people about, is that it is critical when going into the core program, they want to see that you have the support of the select boards of both towns. So the goal of this is to see if the select boards would even consider being supportive of this action, which I think is critical for the school committee to know before we could vote to direct such an action from John, if we had any inclination of it ultimately being successful. So, you know, one of the things that they say it's important that they look at is that, yes, you have the support of both select boards, okay. You know, you don't really know from the town until things get to the polls, but you know, that's the first step. And if both select boards do support it, then, well, then on another meeting, we will have another discussion about whether we actually want to make this move to direct.
It doesn't cost anything to get people's opinions. I think it's a good move.
It's discussion, it's conversation. Okay, everyone ready to vote? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed?
Aye, opposed.
Okay, so motion passes 6-1. Thank you.
Aye.
Oh, 5-1, sorry. Thank you. Okay, so we will continue with the Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Operations, and Human Services, Doug.
So I think I shared with you what I had to report on the MSBA, which was basically, you go into the accelerated repair, the schematic design work that you did was very, very focused on the particular project, so windows and doors in our case for that. You know, in our other two projects, that would be, you know, the roofs. One thing with roofs they always do at this point is to evaluate the capacity for solar panels, because they're looking to you know, have opportunity to green the schools in whatever ways, be ready for electrification of services like heating and cooling. So they're fairly narrowly focused there. I think when you go into a core program, it's a decidedly broader discussion and investigation that you do with them and partner in the process. There's a lot of questions about your educational plan and, you know, all sorts of other factors, as well as a deep analysis of the building itself and what it is capable of and in and along many different vectors. So that was the main thing I just wanted to share with you guys, which hopefully is helpful in thinking about this a little bit. And I guess the other thing I'll just share is just, you know, if you accept the MSB's money, kind of regardless of which program you're in, they have an expectation for useful life, and if you change the purpose of that building away from an educational purpose, they do have mechanisms for recouping those resources from the town. So it's just, you know, worth keeping in mind as you weigh these different options and opportunities.
questions for Doug? Okay. It is now time for public comment. So we will call on those who have signed up for public comment. We do ask that when called that each person state their name and affiliation to the district, that you sit at the microphone, make sure you please press the button, make sure it's green. If you have any documents, if you could please hand them to Aaron Dowding. And just remember, we will not be commenting, we will just be listening. Thank you. Would anyone like to make public comment this evening?
Hi everyone, my name is Carrie Joseph. I live at 175 Sessions Drive in Camden, Mass. My two daughters, Alexis and Dakota, are products of HWRSD. My daughter Alexis is actually currently here at Minnechaug. In addition, I am also a product of the Hamden schools. I graduated from Minnechaug. And not only did my father teach at TWB for nearly 20 years, he and my mother were also graduates of Minnechaug. So you can say I'm very invested in this district. I am here tonight to share with you a petition that has began 48 hours ago and already has been signed well over 500 signatures. They represent educators in the district, residents and parents in Wilbraham and Hamden, alumni and former educators here. It will be delivered electronically once the survey is closed this weekend, and here is what they signed. School committee members, I urge you to immediately settle a fair contract with the Hamden-Wilbraham Education Association. The towns in our region can afford to settle a contract that pays fair wages to teachers and starts to move paraprofessionals toward a living wage. Our educators deserve access to paid family leave, which must be established in a contract as the municipal employees are exempt from the state law mandating paid family leave. Fair wages and working conditions will allow the Hamden-Wilbraham School District to attract and retain the best possible educators to work in our schools. Our schools are losing qualified educators to other districts and other professions that pay better. The work of educators is more complex and demanding than ever. For the benefit of students and communities in the district, it is time to settle a fair contract with educators. You will be able to view each petition signer and the comments they left for you. Thank you for your time and your attention. And I have a copy of this. I know I'm supposed to give it to somebody.
Just to Aaron, right?
Sorry, I just don't
Thank you.
know all the names. So,
Thank you.
There you go.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Damien Conkley, President of the Hamden-Wilbraham Education Association. We also want to provide a sampling of some of the comments that were left by those over 500 signatories so far. First, I've been working in this district for 8 years. I have to work additional jobs just to pay my bills. I have very little hope of ever being able to buy a house or pay off my student loans. I work crazy long hours every day with completely insufficient prep time. I'm lucky if I get 1 to 2 hours for myself or my family per week. I love teaching, but I'm starting to think this career is not a sustainable option for me due to inadequate prep time, leading to long hours after school, and needing to work additional jobs to make ends meet. Second, the education system is facing enough issues without having teachers work without a contract and appropriate raises in salary. Honestly, you're lucky to have retained these teachers up to now. You're doing a disservice to both the employees and the students. As a taxpayer and parent in Wilbraham, I can't imagine a better use of funding than for our educators and staff. I'm appalled and embarrassed for our town that our teachers are working without a contract. It's unacceptable. Our educators are the backbone of our community. They deserve fair, competitive wages and strong benefits that truly reflect the value of their work. I hope you will keep this in mind as you move forward. I know the economy is not great right now, but your offers for a contract have been woefully inadequate and well below the inflation level. These teachers devote their lives to children. the least you can do is devote a little more to them.
Hi, Darcy Lulak, 8th grade teacher at Wilbraham Middle, and here are some more. As a former paraprofessional in the district, I think it's cruel and unfair that livable wages cannot be provided to the educators in the district. I moved out here and took a huge pay decrease when I started working for HWRSD. It was unlivable. When I became pregnant and had absolutely no paid time off for my leave, I made the decision to leave the school district, a very clear one. It made this. I'm now working for a school district that pays significantly more and cares about their employees. Another, we need to do better. I take pride in being a Wilbraham resident and being able to raise my children in this community. Treating our teachers like this is shameful. The work they do is invaluable. We need our teachers to have a fair contract. We have some of the best. Don't we want to keep them here in our district? Lots of question marks and exclamation points after that one. Parental leave would have made me more likely to stay a teacher at HWRSD, hoping for this for all the teachers there. And please show your educators you respect the incredible work that they do every day by settling a fair contract. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Is there anyone else here that's interested in making public comment this evening? Okay, we will continue with subcommittee updates. Curriculum subcommittee?
No update.
Thank you. Planning committee? No update. Finance, operations, and technology subcommittee? Mike?
We had a meeting. We discussed, we didn't have numbers to discuss for the assessment but at this point, but we kind of discussed the plan we've scheduled 3 meetings coming up. Erin has the date, kind of strategically positions before school committee meetings so that we have the chance to pre-discuss things that are then going to be coming to the school committee for discussion. The next meeting is going to be in December 15th, and Doug has promised us exact numbers that are definite. No, just kidding. The roughest possible numbers available at that early juncture so that we can make the towns aware of kind of where things lie and how things are looking. I think the overwhelming feeling of everyone at the subcommittee was to try to be as transparent and open and working with our partners in both towns.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, the LPBEC collaborative representative, please.
No update.
Sorry, we also have the E&D discussion that's listed.
E&D discussion. We had excess and deficiency was certified at a little over $1.2 million.
I can give you the exact number. $1,276,971.
Thank you, Doug. He told me to make sure I memorized it when he said it, but it got away from me there. I think we talked about the expectation that some of that is going to be contributed to the assessment. The numbers that Doug's going to present for us in December, he's going to show us the assessments without any input, and then the assessments with input kind of along the lines of what we did last year, where 500 was kept in reserve for emergencies and the rest of available E&D put towards it. So keep our fingers crossed on how the numbers turn out.
I think we discussed that was a discussion for the larger committee because it's the school committee that makes that recommendation in that vote, and the subcommittee simply discusses and makes recommendations to the committee as well.
And we'll have a full school committee meeting later the same week of the December meeting. So.
But wasn't it discussed and weren't instructions given to Doug not to use any of the E&D towards the budget of that 1.5 million?
There was, that is not, that's what I'm saying. So the Budget and Finance and Operations Committee does not vote to decide that. That subcommittee does not make that decision. It's the full school committee that makes that decision. We were having a conversation, I think you had brought up and made a suggestion to do something, and you were asking our opinions, but there was no vote because subcommittees do not
No,
vote.
I thought it was brought up when you two were talking that you guys were saying that nothing, you guys were recommending that nothing from E&D be put into his calculations when he's figuring out the budget.
I'm fairly certain that
And
I said,
was like, I thought we needed to have at least, you know, some of that money go in there because of our responsibility to the towns and the taxpayers. But is that something maybe we should decide now, or it's on the agenda?
I specifically asked Doug to show us the assessment numbers without any E&D, and then be prepared to present the assessment numbers with contributing all of E&D except for the 500 to hold back for emergency. I wanted him to be able to show the actual impact on the assessments to our town partners of the contributions of the E&D to it. So you have to start out with a higher number, right? That doesn't have any, and then this is how your assessment changes by putting in the E&D. That's, you know, be transparent so everybody sees what's going on. That's what I asked for, the intention of what I,
and no, I did not state that I wanted $0 going to the budget. I said, I'm saying as of this day, I don't know what amount should be allocated to the budget. I'm not prepared to do that. I used the figure that Doug had stated that the E&D had been certified like 2 hours prior to our meeting. I said it's too early to determine how much should go to the budget, but that's a discussion for the full school committee to decide and to vote on.
And shouldn't we have recommendations from Doug?
Today?
No, when he presents what he recommends that we should use?
Yes, you were just asking my opinion.
Okay, I could be wrong, but when I was at that meeting, I got a very clear vibe that he was to put no money from E&D in, and he would be told how much to put in later, and I thought it would have been great to let him say, this is how much I think we should put in, and we can decide on that number when we review the budget.
Doug, how do you typically do your work when you present to the school committee? How do you handle that? Are you looking for us to tell you beforehand?
Traditionally, I'll make a recommendation of how much to leverage, but it's, you know, it's a recommendation. So it's, you know, for you guys to decide what you think is best, whether to reserve some, all, or none of that for either the purpose of holding on to it or pushing into the supports for the budget. You know, the impact is sort of dollar for dollar. So, you know, as far as the assessments to the town, you know, I was discussing this earlier today, and I'll quote basically from the Associate Commissioner of DESE, you know, for Finance, and what he talks about with regard to why there's a 5% limit for E&D, is so that, you know, districts are spending the money that the towns gave them to educate children, right? So there's some need for, you know, retaining some for the purposes of you know, managing emergency circumstances and other just sort of financial management. Plays into, you know, your bond ratings and all those kinds of things are all, you know, part and parcel of the reasons why you retain some of that. And at the same time, it's also, you know, a resource available to support your budget. So I'll probably have some recommendations, but I can certainly put it such that we can tweak that number and sort of see impact. I'm happy to do that.
It's not stopping you from doing the work. I also did want to add, Sean, Mary's notes did remind me of what my initial comment that I made actually in the meeting. I was interested in seeing an updated 10-year capital plan before deciding. Also in thinking about how much E&D would go into the budget. That was a comment that I made.
I think we all in agreement on that.
I just rescanned the minutes. It doesn't seem to clarify your point there, Sean, in the minutes, but it did remind me a couple other things that we discussed. Most importantly, I asked if Doug could please, if it's possible, distribute in writing 24 hours before the meeting to our town officials so they have the opportunity to review the information and are better prepared to discuss it with us both at our meeting and with the school committee meeting. That's it.
I I'd like to remind everybody that all of our meetings are posted on YouTube, so you can refer back to any of our school committee meetings, you can refer to our planning and our budget and finance, so anything that you're looking to see, like verify, you can
She said, quote me.
Quote
me
me,
on
yes.
that.
So you can certainly do that and spread the word, tell your friends.
Pop some popcorn and binge watch several sessions if you want.
You can pause, go back.
So much fun, I promise.
You're welcome. All right, so we will continue with negotiation subcommittee, nothing to report at this time. Policy subcommittee, Mike.
Okay, this is the third reading and possible vote of the following policies. So I'm going to be looking for, a motion to approve and then a second. IKFE, competency determination. IKF, graduation requirements. I will say we had a wonderful discussion on those two, and you won, actually, Rich, because the state has decided to make standardized tests, and so they'll be rolling out. It doesn't matter that we all objected to it. You won. I thought it was
winning or losing.
You know what I mean. There will be standardized tests, and they'll be in more smaller things, and which I think is okay. So anyway, had a note to make that comment. All right, GBEBC, gifts to and solicitations by staff. JJE, student fundraising activities. KBE, relationships with parent booster organizations. ECAB, access to buildings and grounds. EFBA, school food and nutrition meal modifications. KBG, parent advisory councils. Middle school career pathway exploration, not an official policy, but it'll be added to the student manual. It doesn't have a letter. EFE, civil rights complaint policy for child nutrition programs. EFER, civil rights complaint procedures, Hamden Wilbraham Regional School Nutrition Department.
I make a motion to approve the policies that Mike just read.
Second?
Questions or discussion? Okay.
They're all being approved as approved.
Unless somebody wants to pull one out, they are welcome to. But if there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
I abstained.
You abstained.
Because in principle, the first two I would vote against, the rest I would vote for.
I wanted to make sure you knew you won anyway, so that you could support it if you wanted to. All right.
Society wins, not.
All right, LPVEC Corporation, we've not had a meeting. I've signed a few warrants.
Okay, nothing to report on the superintendent evaluation. And now we have our MASC representative, Sean.
So the first proposal, the first resolution about the height and weight measurements, body mass index, it was modified through an amendment to have it so that if parents and doctors require, testing, they can have any testing done, but that's how it is right now. That can be done at any time. And the vote, I believe, was 249 yeas and 1 nay. And that nay was the Hamden Wilbraham Regional School District. And then the other continuing resolution.
I know you wanted to say yay. Thank you, Sean, for wholeheartedly representing us. Oh, thank you.
I did get up and tell them I am not against this, but the committee instructed me to do so, and I am taking on the will of the committee, and I was the sole no vote. All the other resolutions were continued as a unit. So all the other supporting the trans kids and the other motions that were passed before were repassed again. And it was done in record time instead of hours of debate and stuff like that. I don't know how we did it this year, But the president, Jason, right? What's Jason's last name? He just did an excellent job this year. He has a great team, and we'll see how the new president does next year.
Great, thank you. Consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Superintendent's update. John.
Thank you. In September, I shared the results of the SQM parent survey administered last year, which showed that parents from all of our schools rated homeschool communications in the approval or ideal range. And I questioned whether we still needed to implement an action step from our strategic plan that called for us to establish a new means of communication this year. The committee advised me not to rest on those laurels, and that strong home communication that we had established in the district was an asset that I should cherish and continue to keep working on to make even better. After that meeting, we started working to enable the direct SMS capabilities of our final site mass communication platform. Some recent market research conducted by Final Site found that email remains the cornerstone of school communications, with 98.7% of respondents indicating they use email as a communications tool. However, the second most commonly used communication tool was SMS text messaging, which was used by just over 80% of the districts. While the length of the message is the most obvious limitation to SMS texting, there are also many benefits. Research on electronic communication has found that nearly all text messages are read, while less than half of emails are ever opened. Also, text messages receive more immediate attention, with most texts being read within 15 minutes of receipt, whereas email often sits for hours before being opened, if it even is opened. So last night we conducted our first successful full-scale test of our SMS system. We look forward to adding a mobile-focused dimension to our communication efforts as a way of strengthening relationships and engagement within our district. So I'd like to thank you all for encouraging me to keep looking for ways to improve communications. I think text messaging is going to be a hit for us, especially when I announce my first snow day by text, especially with seniors. That's my report.
Do you include students in the text messaging too, or is it just the parents?
It's just parents. But I'm sure the students will find out within seconds.
I was going to say this also is really good, seeing as one of the things we pointed out on our survey was that students felt that communication was poor. So I'm glad that this is being improved.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't include at least the high school students in these SMS messages?
The only reason is that we'd have to gather all of their cell phone information, which right now we don't have the means of doing. If the high school students came to me and begged to be included, I'm sure it's something we could figure out, but I would ask the high school students to probably help me with the work of getting all those telephone numbers in there.
I would also say, as a student that's supposed to represent everyone, I know it's a small community that does it, but for students that don't have cell phones, for them to, feel...
Somebody doesn't have a cell phone?
Say a student doesn't have a cell phone, for them to not feel included in this district-wide group message. So I don't want anyone to feel excluded, but also, I think parents and students can be able to communicate that. And I get enough texts as it is, so even though I appreciate it, I do.
I assume you can give parents and students the same message at the same time.
Well, the email can be much longer than the text.
I'm saying that if you needed to copy the students without phone numbers, you'd be able to text the parents and say, send the same message to kids by email.
Right. So
it should be.
Typically when I do a snow day call, for example, I do send something out to HWRSDL users, which is the email, but I don't expect that many people are logged on looking at their email at that hour.
We can tell you, when we get the snow day call, my mom looks at the phone number, hangs up, says there's a snow day. But yeah, we really do appreciate this, and this is a great thing. I'll be able to let kids know that they voted on communication being better, and it's being better already. It's being modernized, which we love because we love our phones.
John, you also understand that if you have a larger message that you want to get through, you can just have what the message is about and put a link that they can click on if they want to read more information. So
Yes.
there really is, it is limitless when you talk about text messages.
All right. So our next meeting is Thursday, December 4th, here at the IRC at 6:30. We do have the need for executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, C Chapter 38, Section 21A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with HWEA or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. HWEA Units A and C, Contracts, Mass General Law, see Chapter 30A, Section 21A. 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Belchertown versus Desi, Leominster, HWRSD, and Avon. We will not be returning to regular session. We will be adjourning from executive session. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Okay, so we'll do roll call to move into executive session. Tim?
Yes.
Sean?
Aye.
Lisa?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Myself? Yes, we're now moved to executive session, 8:28 p.m. Thank you. Those who will not see, have a very nice holiday break.
We should shut